All of this just works in real time.
Bethesda is one of the biggest companies in the gaming business right now, and even if you don't recognize the name, you'll more than likely know the games they developed, like Skyrim and Fallout 4. Recently, I played through Skyrim again for the first time in over a year, and with some basic visual mods, I actually really enjoyed it. The game still holds up after all these years, and it made me want to go back and try Fallout 4 again. However, after playing that game for just a couple hours, I started to realize something that I think is holding Bethesda games back. Something that, if changed, could make the games a lot better. Now, I know a lot of you might already have a specific thing in mind when it comes to Bethesda's problems. Dozens of bugs and glitches, shady money-grabbing tactics, underdeveloped promises, remastering game one too many times, but none of those are what I want to focus on today. What I want to take a look at is how Bethesda deals with the factions in its games. Okay, so for this video, I'm gonna mainly be focusing on Skyrim and maybe a little bit of Fallout 4 since those are the most successful Bethesda games, and the ones I've recently played. So on the surface, some people might argue that there's nothing wrong with the factions in these games. They all have a believable and somewhat intriguing backstory, as well as at least 1 to 2 really memorable characters. But when you start to look deeper and actually play the factions a bit more, especially on a replay, you'll start to notice that they feel a bit lacking. Let's look at a specific faction to explain what I mean. We'll use the College of Winterhold from Skyrim as an example. This is a faction that consists of, college of magical students and teachers. Think of it like a very discounted Hogwarts, and there are no kids either. So you would assume that the people who would thrive best here are the players mainly focusing on a magic type character. Well, when you first arrive at the college, you're instructed to cast a simple spell to prove you have magical abilities and are willing to learn. I actually like this part and I'll come back to it later. After you pass that entrance test, you join 3 apprentice mages, learning from one of the college's professors. Then you learn a simple spell that can block magic, perform it in front of the class, and then are tasked with going to an ancient ruin with the rest of the class. Once you arrive, you go inside, pick up a necklace, cast another simple spell, walk about 15 steps, and then are approached by a powerful monk wizard who is from one of the most secretive organizations ever and freezes time to tell you that you are an important asset in the future of the college. I think some of you might already know why I'm not a fan of this. Anyways, grab a giant orb, find some books, talk to a floating ball of light, find a map, get a staff, stop the evil elf man from using the giant orb for evil, and then you're named the college's new Archmage, which is like the head of the whole place. Now keep in mind, you're only required to cast 3 very low-level spells, and the rest is up to you if you want to use magic or not. But either way, you're the head of the college now. Congrats, I guess? Honestly, if you're playing as a mage, then yeah, it feels somewhat rewarding. In fact, the final boss is one who can drain your magic abilities, but if you're not using a magic-based character, well then this just all seems out of place to be doing it, and the final boss is a cakewalk. But the problem lies with the fact that I'm able to do all these quests so easily, even if I'm not playing as a mage. The other factions in Skyrim are like this too. The Dark Brotherhood, a group of well-trained secret assassins, and the Thieves Guild are both factions that are known for working in the shadows, being stealthy and secretive, yet almost none of the missions ever really require stealth or discretion. Sure, at times it might be optional, but you can never fail a quest or essentially get to a point where the quest is almost impossible to do because your character doesn't have a lot of stealth. But just like the College of Winterhold, by the end of the questline, you're named the leader of each guild. Fallout 4 isn't that much better either. The Minutemen name you their leader within 2 quests, and you get to be the director of Institute by nepotism. And while the other 2 factions, the Railroad and Brotherhood of Steel, don't make you their leader, they still have their fair share of issues. See, really, my main problem with all of these factions is that I never feel like I'm challenged for not having a certain skill or build. And I'm not really rewarded all that much either for putting skill points into things that you would think align with a certain faction. And what's more is that either way, I still become the leader, or at least close to it. Although, to play devil's advocate, I can sort of understand why Bethesda designed it this way. If players can never experience the main story of these factions without putting a bunch of points into a certain build, then yeah, of course, the game's gonna feel a lot shorter for a lot of people because they just simply don't want to bother with it. Right, maybe a player wants to experience at least a little bit of a faction like the Thieves Guild, and see if the questline has an interesting story, but maybe isn't the biggest fan of sneaking because it's too slow paced for them. So, what's the solution to this? How do you make these guilds and factions feel rewarding for the players who just try to play more in line with them, while also not soft-locking other players who just want to go through the story? Well, truth be told, some of the factions actually have given us the answer already. Kind of. Well, we're given it in parts. I know I may have made it sound like the factions in these games are boring or just straight up bad, but that's not the case. Okay, except for one of them. But still, the reason I'm making this video is because I saw what the factions really could have been in some places. For example, the Civil War faction in Skyrim is really good for a couple reasons. The first being that you actually get to pick a side, something that none of the other factions really have. Technically, you can side against the Dark Brotherhood faction, but it's only 2 very short missions and not rewarding when you compare it to the actual faction itself. But both sides in the Civil War faction have a vast amount of quests to do. The second thing is that you're given ranks throughout the quest line. You start off as this regular soldier, and as you do more and more quests, you're given different titles by either faction's leader. It's a very small thing, but it does make the player feel like they're actually progressing through the ranks, rather than just going from new guy to leader. Another place we can look towards is the Thieves Guild faction. Here, there are technically 2 quest lines. The first one dealing with the main story, and the second one is about restoring the guild back to its glory days. Now, as I said before, the main story can be done by any character. It doesn't have to be someone who's a master pickpocketer or lockpicker or expert in stealth. The second quest line, however, does require a bit more skills in order to complete it. After you finish that quest line, you're officially commemorated as the guild's leader and are rewarded with special armor. The only thing that kind of bugs me though is that by the end of the main story quest line, you're already named the leader, so the second quest line feels more like it's celebrating the fact rather than rewarding you with it. And while this is still more in depth than a lot of the other factions, I feel like we can go further. See, with both the Civil War and the Thieves Guild second questline, a big issue I have is that these quests really don't vary all that much. But if you're rising in the ranks in, say, I don't know, the Civil War faction, I feel like you should be doing more than just going to some random fort and killing like 10 to 15 soldiers every time. Yes, some people are going to say that there are some infiltration missions in some of the bigger cities, but that's really not a lot compared to what I'm thinking. And while I did just praise the Thieves Guild's second questline, you can complete it all by pretty much just doing very basic Radiant quests. These are quests that are usually just randomly generated by the game and have little to no story or lore or details really to it. Just mainly gameplay. For those who have played Fallout 4, it's like the annoying settlement quest that everyone memes on. Now, while the Radiant quests here for the Thieves Guild do require you to have a bit more of skills invested into stuff like lockpick, pickpocket, and sneak, it's never really challenging, or never really requires you to go past having just the bare minimum invested. So how can we change this? How do we make this feel much more fleshed out? Well, since it's a good foundation already, let's use the Thieves Guild from Skyrim as a template to work off from, and show what I would do to change all of the factions. The first thing we need to add is an opposing faction. In the main questline, the Thieves Guild deals with a more internal conflict and how a single ex-member of the guild is trying to change things and ruin the guild's prosperity. And while this works from a story standpoint, from a gameplay one it feels kind of lacking. Let's say you're playing as a good-natured character. Maybe you come to Riften and hear about the Thieves Guild and how they've partnered up with the town's richest family, the Blackbriars. And so as a result, the city has become a dangerous, crime-ridden place that has corrupt guards and officials. So maybe you want to do something about this and return Riften to a safe place again. You could partner up with some of the town citizens who have wanted to take down the Thieves Guild for a while, but never had someone powerful enough to execute their plan, which is where you come in. You could have missions like going to investigate rumors and deals involving the guild. Perhaps they take you all across Skyrim. Maybe an undercover mission that makes you try to gather as much intel as you can about the guild. Or maybe journeying across Skyrim to gather people and persuade politicians to help you in your fight against the guild and the Blackbriars. The questline doesn't have to be as fleshed out as the main faction's questline, but I think there should still at least be enough substance to justify playing the other side, rather than just not having or barely having any other options. Okay, but let's focus on the faction itself. I'll say it again, I really do like the 2 questline system, but we can definitely add more to it to make it feel much more fleshed out, as well as let players utilize their skills. So, in the original game, as soon as you get to the city of Riften, you're approached by one of the guild's main members, Brynjolf. He assumes you're a thief at heart, and all the money you've earned was done dishonestly, which to be honest, doesn't really make that much sense if you're trying to play a good-natured character or someone who just didn't care about the thief skills, so it's just easier making money by dungeons and selling treasures and blah blah blah, all that stuff. But regardless, after that, he offers you work by helping him lockpick a chest in one of the market stalls and stealing a ring. Afterward, you're supposed to plant it on another shopkeeper in order to frame him and get arrested. Now, I do think this quest is good, but I just kind of wish you were recruited a little better. Having Brynjolf approach you on the street and forcing this quest upon you almost immediately as you come into the city for the first time, it just seems a little bit like the game saying, hey, here's the Thieves Guild, this is them, please don't miss or skip them, it's really fun, we promise. Especially when the whole nature of the Thieves Guild is supposed to be a bit more secretive. I mean, I understand that in the story, they're down on their luck, so they might be a little desperate about looking for help, but I still feel like there are better ways to go about it. Let me propose just like 2 different ways we could execute this. The first is by having an invisible meter that the players can't see. Let's call it the thief meter, I don't know. The more actions you do that's in line with the Thieves Guild, lockpick, pickpocket, persuade, intimidate, steal, etc., the more points get added to this thief meter, and when it's maxed out at 100%, maybe the next time you're in a big city, you get a notification saying you felt like something was just placed into your pocket. You check your inventory and see there's a note saying to come to the Ragged Flagon in Riften, which is the Thieves Guild headquarters. You get down there and then are essentially recruited for your reputation and then start the initiation quest, which honestly is better since you're discussing it in a private location and not literally right next to the shopkeeper like with the original. The other way I was thinking is we could be recruited in a similar way to how you're recruited for the Dark Brotherhood faction. See, with that one, you have to find out about a rumor of a boy who is trying to summon the Dark Brotherhood and track down the lead yourself. Then you can choose to assassinate the woman he once killed, and if you do, the Brotherhood recruits you for essentially taking a job of theirs that you did well in their eyes. We could do the same thing with the Thieves Guild. Maybe one of their old clients is waiting for them at a local inn, but gets fed up with waiting for too long, so asks for your help instead. Maybe he mentions that you can't be any worse than the guild since they're pretty much dying out with their string of bad luck recently. So this client sends you on a mission, nothing too complicated, maybe something like, I don't know, stealing something from a store in a place where no one's actually looking. Then pays you for the job, and then a few days later, the next time you travel to Riften or something, you're approached by a thief that demands you come with them to meet their boss, and then once again you're recruited. I honestly think that having both options in this game would be the best way to execute it, but even if you put only one in, it's enough to make you feel like not anyone can just join the guild, but it's not too hard that you have to put a lot of points or have a very specific build to be able to join. So we're officially in the guild. Now how do we keep this going? Well, the main quest line can pretty much stay the same. I think it's a good story with decent quests, maybe not the best thief type quest, but good for anyone that wants to experience the story and not have to focus too much on the necessary skills. The only thing I want to change is how you become the guild's leader at the end of it. I think that needs to be earned more with the second quest line. And if you haven't completed the other quest line, then I don't know, Brynjolf just tells you that he'll lead the guild until they can find someone who is more competent for the job. Now the second quest line. This is where we're really gonna make players utilize their skills more. This is the part where we reward those who wanted to build a character more in line with the guild. So I want to make another invisible meter. We'll call it the leader meter. I'm not the best with these names. Every time you do a quest for the second quest line, the meter is raised. You should start off by doing very easy Radiant quests. I mean like quests that require almost no skills whatsoever to complete successfully. One of the quests I actually had in mind was convincing store owners to pay a fee to the Thieves Guild. This was actually one of the missions done in the initiation, and I thought it was good because it was another side to the Thieves Guild and was something that built up their reputation. Plus, you can do an optional thing like blackmail, bribe, or fight to get them to pay. Maybe the Radiant quest version wouldn't be as in-depth, but it would still be nice to have an option to either persuade or intimidate. Seeing as how I feel like speech is very underutilized in Skyrim, and if any faction would use it to the fullest, it would be the Thieves Guild. Anyways, quests like that, or maybe stealing objects from abandoned buildings or dungeons, or maybe a quest where you have to find blackmail on people that the other guild members can use for a bigger mission they're planning. Just basically stuff to make you feel like a lackey, a regular goon of the guild. Not anyone special. Yet. I also think you should just start off being called something simple like rookie, or just even new guy / girl. You effectively have yet to prove yourself. Maybe if you got recruited by getting a reputation like I mentioned earlier, you immediately start one level ahead or something. But either way, these beginning quests also give you very little points to level up your leader meter, maybe like only 2 or 3 points. But in the beginning, the meter is also very small, needing only 10 to 15 points to level up. As you level up your meter, your nickname is changed, and so are the quests available to do. Maybe now you have access to quests like stealing from a small store or a stall in the market, pickpocketing some basic items from regular people, but no one's super rich. Now you're using your skills more effectively, but you know, if you're still caught or something, you won't get into too much trouble. It's essentially a true test to prove yourself to the guild. And these quests would be worth more points, maybe 10 to 20 points. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. You keep leveling up the jobs you can do and the reputation you have in the guild. It becomes harder and harder to level up your leader meter with the smaller, easier Radiant quests, which means that if you want to make some real progress, you're going to have to invest in skills like lockpick, pickpocket, speech, etc., so you can complete the harder, more advanced jobs. Maybe by near the end, you have these really advanced, longer jobs, like breaking someone out of prison, blackmailing an important politician, stealing a rare object from a really rich person's house, replacing a store owner with someone more favorable towards the guild. Then after all that, your final test is this giant heist, maybe stealing something so valuable it needs the whole guild to prepare for it, like some jewel that has been separated into pieces. And each one of the district's leaders, the Jarls, have a piece, so you have to wait until some council where they all meet so you can steal it all at once. It would be like this mini storyline consisting of maybe 4 to 5 quests. You have to prepare, select a team from members of the guild, gather information, bribe some people to look the other way, get some people undercover, get disguises. There are a bunch of ways to go about it. But either way, by the end, the heist is a success, the guild gets restored back to its former glory, and you're named the official guild leader. Now, instead of feeling like the bare minimum gets you to the top, you're more encouraged into playing a certain style and are well rewarded when you do. I think having this sort of 2 questline system works really well to appease casual players, more hardcore players, and the developers. Having the main story route lets the more casual players find out about the lore and go on adventures with the factions, while not having to worry about the skills. Whereas the skill-oriented route lets more hardcore players really utilize their builds and feel rewarded for investing their skill points into certain skill trees. While this route might not have the most interesting story, especially when compared to the main questline, the attraction here is the gameplay. Being able to have a quest that's designed to challenge your stealth or your magic or your combat is enough to make players feel happy. I'm not saying that no work can't be put into terms of story or lore, but it's just not going to be focusing on it as much. It's also really great for the developers since they don't really have to worry about locking players out from a certain faction, and those who want the story can go one way and those who want the gameplay can go another way. And for those who want both, well, they're going to invest a ton of time into the faction. Is it a perfect design? No, probably not. But I think there's so much more depth and variety with this system than the originals. And I know there will be someone in the comments saying how hard it is to develop a game and all the things that go into making even a single quest, and I understand that. My knowledge of game development and coding is only some very, very basic stuff in like C+. But 2 things. 1, as I said before, I made this video because I saw hints of this idea in the game already and realized how much better the factions could be if the developer spent just a little more time on it. So I know this is all possible for them. And 2, Bethesda is a big company, one of the biggest. While I might not be good at game development, I'm sure a handful of the 420 plus employees under Bethesda's management are. That's not to say that they did a bad job or that I think they didn't want to make any more. It was probably just a case of upper management setting a deadline and they couldn't fit everything they wanted to in the game. Seriously, if you look up how much content was cut from Skyrim, I think you'd agree with me on that statement. So basically, if you're trying to make a game like Skyrim, or just really any RPG-like game, make sure you focus a lot of your time on having systems in place to reward the player for wanting to use certain skills. And I think the concept of factions like these are a really great way to execute that premise. And if anyone at Bethesda is watching this that's currently working on Elder Scrolls 6, it would be cool if you did something like this. Also, can I get an interview with Todd Howard? Lastly, I just want to say that Skyrim and Fallout 4 are not bad games. I don't want people taking that idea away from this video. Skyrim is still one of my favorite games of all time and does so much right. The open world is fantastic to explore. The lore and story feels really fleshed out. The amount of ways you can play the game makes it so much fun to just replay over and over again. I just wanted to talk about one of the few things that I think could have been done better. So here's hoping that the next game takes it to heart.